The Vice-Chancellor paused, looked straight at me, and said words that made the whole hall go silent. "Before we continue," he said, "Miss Nadia Asare has been specially invited on stage by a man her family knows very well." My fingers tightened around my graduation cap. I had come to the ceremony alone. My parents had refused to attend. My younger brother said graduation was just another school event. My mother told me not to be dramatic. My father said he had more important things to do that morning. So when I heard those words, my heart started beating so hard that I could barely breathe. Then the Vice-Chancellor said the name. Justice Kwaku Badu. The same man my parents had warned me about for years. The same man they claimed hated our family. The same man they said would never help me. People turned to look at me. I stood slowly, confused and shaking. Then I saw him rise from the front row, holding a slim brown file in his hand. He was calm. He was respected. And he was looking at me like he had been searching for me for a very long time. I still did not understand why. But I knew one thing in that moment. Whatever was inside that file was bigger than my graduation. Everything changed because of that one moment. If this story touches your heart, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone you care about. My name is Nadia Asare. I was 24 years old that day. I lived in Accra, Ghana, in a crowded family house at Adenta. I was the first person in my family to finish law school. At least, I was supposed to be celebrated for that. Instead, I learned that success can expose pain that failure keeps hidden. I had always been the quiet one. I worked hard, spoke gently, and avoided useless fights. I did not like borrowing money. I kept a small notebook where I wrote every expense: transport, food, data bundles, photocopies, soap. Everything had a line. I was not poor in spirit, but I was careful with money. I had to be. I studied law at the University of Ghana and worked evening shifts at a small hotel in Osu. I was a receptionist there. I checked in tired travelers, answered phone calls, and smiled even when my feet hurt. Some nights I left the hotel at midnight and still woke up before dawn to read. I carried my books everywhere. I read in trotro buses. I read while waiting for guests. I read during power cuts under a rechargeable lamp. I did not come from a family that made room for dreams. I came from a family that expected sacrifice. Still, I believed my life could be different. I wanted to become a corporate lawyer. Not because I loved titles, not because I wanted attention. I wanted stability. I wanted to understand papers people signed without reading. I wanted to protect people from losing property, money, and dignity through lies. I did not know then how personal that dream would become. People often told me I was too calm. Maybe I was. Even when life pressed on me, I stayed steady. When my salary came, I divided it immediately. Some went to school needs. Some went to transport. Some went to the house. Sometimes my mother acted like that was normal. Sometimes my father took it without asking. I still gave. That was who I was. I believed family was family. I believed patience could soften hard hearts. For years, I was wrong. My father, Ya Asare, sold building materials in Medina. When business was good, he walked like a chief. When business was bad, everyone in the house suffered his silence. My mother, Mabel Asare, ran a provisions shop from the front of our home. She knew everybody's business on the street. She could smile at neighbors in the morning and insult me before lunch. My younger brother, Kelvin, was the golden child. He was 2 years younger than me. He failed twice in college and changed career plans every year. Still, my parents spoke about him like he was a future minister. If Kelvin wanted new shoes, he got them. If Kelvin wanted money for a business idea, my father found it. If Kelvin made mistakes, they called him young. If I made one small mistake, they called me proud. My cousins knew it too. At weddings, funerals, and Sunday lunches, they said the same thing. Nadia is strong. She can manage. That sentence sounds like praise. Sometimes it is just a softer way to abandon someone. When school fees were short, I worked more hours. When the shop needed help, I locked my books and served customers. When my aunt fell sick, I spent weekends at the hospital. When Kelvin borrowed my laptop and returned it broken, I said nothing. When my mother used my savings to support a cousin's church wedding, I swallowed the pain. I always told myself that peace was better than drama. I always told myself my time would come. Even when my parents praised Kelvin for things I had already done, I stayed quiet. He once sold second-hand phones for 3 months, and my father slaughtered a goat. I passed my second-year law exams with distinction, and my mother only said, "Good, now wash the dishes." That was my family. Not openly cruel every day. Just unfair in ways that slowly train you to expect less. I was the one they trusted with responsibility and denied affection. I cooked when my mother was tired. I covered electricity tokens when my father delayed. I helped Kelvin write business proposals he never completed. I even lied to relatives when debt collectors came to the gate. I protected the name of people who never protected mine. That was why what happened later cut so deep. The money was painful. The lie was worse. But the worst part was learning that my own parents were not just careless with my future. They were planning around my failure. The first strange sign came 3 months before graduation. I went to the bursar's office to clear my final school account. I expected a small balance for graduation fees and gown rental. Instead, the woman behind the desk frowned at her computer and asked if I had changed banks. I told her no. She turned the screen slightly and pointed at the record. A book allowance had been released in my name. A hardship grant had also been processed, and a final tuition support payment had arrived from a private trust. But all 3 had been routed to an account I did not recognize. I thought it was an error. I showed her my student bank details. They did not match. She looked at me carefully and lowered her voice. "Someone has been updating your file," she said. I laughed because I was confused. "No one can do that except me." She shook her head. "Or someone with your documents." I left that office feeling cold. On the Trotro ride home, I checked my student portal. My backup email had been changed. My phone number had also been changed 2 semesters earlier. I stared at the screen until my stop came. I had never made those changes. That night, I said nothing at home. I watched. My mother moved normally. My father ate in silence. Kelvin stayed glued to his phone. No one looked nervous. That frightened me more. 2 days later, I found another strange thing. A torn envelope near the kitchen bin. My name was on it. The sender was Badu Legal Trustees. I had never seen the letter inside. When I asked my mother if any mail had come for me, she wiped her hands and said no. She did not blink. That was the moment I stopped thinking this was a mistake. Something was being hidden from me. I just did not know how large it was. And I still had no idea who Justice Kwaku Badu really was to my family. When I was younger, I heard his name only in angry whispers. My mother once said he thought he was better than everyone. My father said he liked controlling poor relatives with money. Whenever I asked questions, the room changed. So I stopped asking. Now his name was on letters addressed to me. I knew I had to be careful. If I accused anyone too early, the truth would disappear. So I became patient in a new way. I started collecting pieces. At school, I asked for printed account statements from every semester. At first, the clerk refused. Then I explained quietly that someone might be using my identity. He printed everything. That file changed my life. Payments had come into my account history for years. Not large riches, but enough to cover books, fees, and living support. Every time help arrived, another transfer followed within days. Same amount, same pattern. Different destination account. The signature on the authorization forms looked like mine at first glance, but it was not mine. It was slower, forced, like someone had practiced it. My chest tightened. I knew then that this was not one lie. It was a system. The betrayal became real the week before graduation. I went to the bank listed on one of the transfer forms. I did not shout. I did not cry there. I asked to speak with the branch operations officer. I showed my ID, my school statements, and the copied signatures. At first, they would not give details. Then I mentioned fraud. I mentioned police reporting. I mentioned forged instructions. Their tone changed. They still could not hand me everything, but one woman made one mistake. She said, "If this is family, please resolve it quickly." Family. That single word nearly broke me. I walked outside and sat on a low wall near the bank gate. Cars passed. Vendors shouted. People lived their normal lives. Mine had just tilted. I called the only adult I trusted fully. Auntie Efua. She was not my real aunt. She was my old landlord's sister, a seamstress in Dansoman. Years earlier, when I could not pay rent on time, she had fed me instead of insulting me. She listened to my shaking voice and told me to come immediately. I went with the whole file. She read every page slowly. Then she asked a question that made my skin rise. Nadia, did your grandmother ever promise to support your education? I told her my mother's mother died when I was 13. I only remembered her as a quiet woman who liked white church blouses and boiled groundnuts. Auntie Efua nodded. Then you need a lawyer before you confront anyone. That same evening, she took me to a small law office at Ridge. The lawyer was a serious woman named Mrs. Na Taki. She did not waste words. She reviewed my papers and told me 3 things. First, someone had likely forged my signature more than once. Second, someone had interfered with my student records. Third, the trust payments meant there was a legal arrangement I did not know about. Then she asked me the hardest question. Are you ready if the people involved are your parents? I wanted to say no. Instead, I said yes. Because by then, part of me already knew. I just needed proof strong enough to survive denial. Mrs. Taki moved fast. She wrote to the university. She wrote to the bank. She requested records from the trustees. She also told me not to alert my family. People hide evidence when fear enters the room, she said. So I went home and acted normal. I ate my mother's rice. I listened to Kelvin boast about a car lot opening my father was funding for him. I even smiled when my father said graduation was small compared to real business. Then my mother said it plainly. We will not come for that ceremony. Kelvin's launch is the same day. My spoon froze in my hand. She continued eating. As a woman, you have done enough school. Let your brother have his day. I looked at my father. He did not defend me. He only said, do not create tension. I went to bed that night and cried into my pillow without sound. Not because they refused to come. That pain was old. I cried because I now understood something deeper. They were not missing my graduation by accident. They had chosen against me for years. I thought that was the worst pain. I was wrong. The next clue came from the university IT office. Mrs. Taki had pushed them hard. They found that my student portal had been accessed several times from a phone number registered under Kelvin's name. My recovery email had been linked briefly to my father's old business email. I stared at the printed report and felt sick. Kelvin had not just benefited. He had participated. The brother whose project plans I typed. The brother I covered for when he missed rent. The brother I defended when relatives called him lazy. He had helped steal from me. When I asked myself what hurt most, it was not the money. It was the memory of all the times I sat beside him, sharing food, while he knew. I still stayed calm. Mrs. Taki said calm people remember details. Angry people miss them. So I kept building the case. A week later, the trustees replied. That was when the buried family secret came out. My grandmother, Madame Grace Badu, had created a small education trust before she died. It was not for all grandchildren. It was specifically for the first granddaughter who gained admission to university and stayed in school honestly. That was me. The trustee handling it was Justice Kwaku Badu, my grandmother's elder brother. He had sent letters for years. He had requested meetings. He had even increased the support after hearing I worked night shifts. But every letter had been intercepted. Every attempt to reach me had been blocked. And the funds had been redirected using forged forms. My mother had lied about him. My father had lied too. The man they described as proud and wicked had been paying for my future while they drained it. I sat in that office for a long time after hearing this. I did not speak. I only remembered my grandmother's hands on my head when I was little. I remembered her saying, "Read hard, little one. No one can seize knowledge." Maybe she knew. Maybe that trust was her final way of protecting me. But even then, one piece was missing. How far had my parents gone? I got the answer from security footage. The bank released it after the formal complaint. The video showed my mother at the counter with Kelvin beside her. She was wearing the same blue church scarf she used on communion Sundays. Kelvin handed over papers. My mother signed. They both smiled. I watched it once, then again. Then I asked the officer to stop it. I could not bear a third time. My father did not appear in the footage. For one weak moment, I hoped he was innocent. That hope did not last. Phone records tied one of the authorization calls to his number. His business account had also received transfers soon after some trust payments. Later, Mrs. Tacky discovered those funds helped pay for Kelvin's failed import deal and the deposit on his new car lot. My education had been converted into my brother's image. My struggle had been turned into his opportunity. That was the real betrayal. They did not only steal my support, they reassigned my future. And still, I had no idea what would happen at graduation. Justice Badu requested one private meeting before the ceremony. We met in a quiet office near campus. He was older than I imagined. Sharp eyes, gentle voice, simple black suit. No drama. He apologized before he said anything else. I should have come earlier in person, he told me. I trusted family channels. That was my mistake. I asked him why my mother hated his name so much. He sighed and looked tired. He said my mother believed my grandmother loved me more than she loved Kelvin. When the trust documents were read after the funeral, my mother felt insulted. She wanted the money shared equally or controlled by her directly. Justice Badu refused. From that day, he became the enemy in her story. Then he looked at me and said something I will never forget. You were never supposed to struggle alone this way. I finally cried in front of someone. Not loudly, not wildly. Just enough to release years of confusion. He handed me a handkerchief and told me the criminal complaint had already started. He also said he wanted to say something publicly at my graduation. I asked him not to shame them for revenge. He nodded. Truth is not revenge, he said. Truth is record. On graduation morning, I wore my gown alone. I pinned my hair myself. I took a taxi to campus with my certificate folder on my lap. My phone stayed quiet. No good luck message. No parent call. No brother apology. Nothing. The ceremony began under bright morning heat. Families filled the hall with color, cameras, and proud noise. I sat between a girl whose mother kept fixing her collar and a boy whose father was already crying. I smiled for them. Inside, I felt empty. Then my name was called among the top graduating students. As I stood, the vice-chancellor raised his hand and stopped the applause. That was the moment from the beginning. He announced that I had been specially invited on stage by Justice Kwaku Badu. A wave moved through the hall. People knew his name. Some faculty members sat straighter. I walked forward slowly. He met me halfway. Then he turned to the microphone. What he said next exposed everything. He said my late grandmother had created an education trust in my name. He said that for years, the support had been diverted through forged documents. He said an official complaint had already been filed. He did not mention every dirty detail. He did not need to. His voice was enough. The hall became so quiet that I heard someone drop a program sheet. Then he placed the brown file in my hands. Inside were the certified trust papers, recovery orders, and an offer. A legal fellowship. A full professional training sponsorship. And a letter from my grandmother, written before her death, to be given to me only on my graduation day. My knees nearly failed. Then I heard movement at the back of the hall. I turned. My parents had arrived. So had Kelvin. Later, I learned a cousin had seen the live stream and sent it to the family WhatsApp group. The moment Justice Badu's name appeared on screen, they rushed from Kelvin's car lot opening to campus. Not because they suddenly loved me, because they knew money was involved. They stood frozen near the doors. My mother looked like all the air had left her body. My father could not lift his head. Kelvin stared at the file like he still thought it might belong to him. Justice Badu saw them too, but he kept his voice steady. Then he said the final sentence. Miss Nadia Asare succeeded not because her path was easy, but because her character was stronger than the hands that tried to limit her. The applause that followed felt heavy, not joyful. I did not smile widely. I did not wave like a winner. I only held the file and told the truth when the vice-chancellor gave me the microphone. I said, I worked hard because I believed education could save my life. Today, I also learned that truth can save it too. That was all. I gave the microphone back. I did not need more words. Outside the hall, Everything collapsed quietly. My mother tried to pull me aside. I stepped back.
My father said we should discuss it at home.
Mrs. Tacky, who had attended at Justice Badu's invitation, walked forward and told them there would be no private rewriting of facts. Kelvin tried to act angry. Then the bank officer standing nearby greeted him by name. I watched his face change. For the first time in years, no lie came out fast enough to protect him. The consequences did not come like movie revenge. They came like real life, slow, public, and hard to undo. My parents were questioned for fraud and forgery. Because it was a family matter with strong documentation and recovery options, the process began with formal charges, repayment terms, and asset tracing. Kelvin's new car lot lost its deposit after investigators linked part of the funds to the stolen trust money. My father's suppliers cut him off when the story spread through business circles. My mother's shop became painfully quiet. Churchwomen who once praised her stopped sitting near her. Relatives who had enjoyed the benefits suddenly claimed they knew nothing. That is how family crowds behave when truth enters. They scatter from the fire they helped feed. I did not celebrate any of it. Pain does not become joy just because justice arrives. I attended meetings. I signed statements. I answered questions. I kept my voice steady. When people asked if I wanted my parents jailed, I said I wanted the truth recorded and the stolen support restored properly. Nothing more, nothing less. My mother cried when she realized the case would not disappear through apology. My father aged quickly after that. Kelvin sent me long messages at night, calling himself pressured and confused. I read them once and archived them. Being pressured is not the same as being innocent. Being confused is not the same as forging another person's future. Within months, my life began to change in quieter ways. The fellowship from Justice Badu placed me in a respected law chamber in Accra. For the first time, I worked in an office where people valued my mind before my usefulness. I rented a small one-bedroom apartment near Achimota. It was not fancy, but it was clean, peaceful, mine. I bought my first sofa with cash. I bought curtains without asking anyone's permission. I stocked my fridge and no one touched it. At night, I could read without hearing insults through the wall. That kind of peace can make a person cry, too. Justice Badu did not try to become a replacement parent. He respected distance. But he kept his word. He guided me. He introduced me to people based on merit, not pity. One day, he gave me my grandmother's original letter in a frame. I read it alone. She wrote that she saw in me a quiet strength that would need protection. She wrote that some people only respect daughters when daughters become useful. She told me never to confuse sacrifice with love. I carried that sentence into every new season of my life. I also started volunteering on Saturdays with a small girls' education program in Nima. I helped young students fill scholarship forms, read contracts, and open bank accounts safely. I taught them one simple lesson. Always know where your name is being used. Always read before you sign. Always keep your own copies. Those girls listened to me because I was not speaking theory. I was speaking survival. My parents tried many times to rebuild contact. At first it was through relatives, then through church elders, then through soft messages on holidays. I answered with respect, but I did not reopen my doors quickly. Forgiveness and access are not the same thing. I learned that too. Months later, I met my mother in a public cafe. She cried again. She said envy had entered her heart long ago and made her cruel. She said she feared I would rise and leave them behind. I told her the truth. You lost me when you chose my failure over my future. She covered her face and said nothing. I did not speak harshly. I did not insult her. Some truths do not need volume. Today, when I look back at that graduation, I do not remember the gown first. I remember the file in my hands. I remember the silence in the hall. I remember the shock on the faces of people who thought I would stay small forever. Most of all, I remember that truth found me when the people closest to me had done everything to bury it. That day did not only give me a certificate, it gave me clarity. It taught me that blood can begin a family, but character decides whether it remains one. It taught me that being calm does not mean being weak. It taught me that patience is powerful when it walks beside evidence. And it taught me that love without honesty is only control wearing a softer face. If you are the one in the family who carries everything quietly, please hear me. Your silence may protect peace for a while, but it should never protect injustice forever. Speak when the time is right. Keep your records. Trust your instincts. And never let people convince you that your dream is too expensive while they are secretly spending it. Sometimes the people who refuse to clap for you are the same people who feared what your success would expose. And sometimes losing the ones you trusted is the first step toward finally standing where you were always meant to be.